I move to item number 7. For discussion and for possible action, consideration to approve revised bidding process and procedures, including documents used for construction bidding, tabled from 8/2013 board meeting for review by legal counsel.
Okay, as the board knows, we've been working on revising our construction bidding process. We've been quite diligent in working, using the City of Mesquite's model as a template to go off of. As you may recall at the last meeting, we had some discussions on whether or not we wanted to include the professional services portion of that in there, and I believe the decision was let's do that as a separate issue, which we'll do in the future. Since that time, legal counsel has taken the documents that we kind of massaged and went through, and you have in front of you legal counsel's edits and reviews and suggested changes to the documents to make improvements on them. Staff has looked at them. We are in agreement with the legal suggested changes. The only thing that staff, Aaron and I were talking before the board meeting, is we'd like to set a limit so that we're not using it on the smaller projects, because this process is fairly wieldy for projects under $25,000. And Nevada law requires us to go out to open bids on anything over $100,000. We'd like to drop that down to the $25,000 level and do that, but for projects under $25,000, currently Nevada law allows us to go out and get 3 bids.
One bid and act 25,000 ups.
Yeah, sorry. Under 25,000 requires us to get 1 bid, but what we'd like to do is continue our current process of getting 3 bids for under $25,000, and then using the process for the larger projects over $25,000. So, as the board considers this for approval, the staff would like a recommendation from the board on a potential cutoff. On where we can use the process, and then where we can just go out for the bids to make things a lot easier for staff to move the smaller projects along. If that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. And I agree that, that probably under 25,000 is probably a good number. But, I've always been a proponent of allowing, even if it's a small thing, making sure that we're allowing, if there's 3 companies in Mesquite to do it, let's call them up and let's get a price, let's go with the best one. I'm not saying that we have to go through the whole process. I agree that that's timely and maybe not cost effective with a smaller bid, but it doesn't take a whole lot to pick up the phone and say, hey, can you give us a price on this, and then compare those and go with the best deal. I think not only does it save the district money, but it also lets the community know that, hey, we're conscientious about who does business here, and we want to be fair with everybody. So,
Deja vu, we've had this conversation in the past, and if it's under that, I just still need to maintain that integrity and get at least 3. I don't think it takes a lot of time and effort to do that. Are we comfortable with the 25,000 cutoff, or the only thing is, like I'm saying, if it's a true emergency? Now, we've had emergencies in the past that I don't think qualified as true emergencies, and this cost this district and the residents a lot of money. I mean, there may be some situations where, look, it's pretty straightforward. It may be 50,000, maybe 75. I mean, maybe we need to allow conditions, but I mean, I like the 25,000, but I don't want to tie our hands if there's a need to.
Bo just reminded me that there are certain conditions that are in this process that for projects under $100,000 we don't need to do. This is meant for projects larger than $100,000. So when I recommended $25,000, I spoke out of turn.
But even in the case of an emergency, you know, I think it's good business for us to not always use the same person in an emergency situation.
Oh,
If
absolutely.
there's 3 people that can handle it, let's try to rotate that. You know, obviously, if you can't get a hold of somebody, that changes the game. But, you know, let's try to get, you know, you follow what I'm saying here. I think it's good business not to keep using the same guy in an emergency situation, unless, of course, they're the only provider in town.
I absolutely agree, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the district now, aren't we compiling names of contractors that in this particular
Yeah, I just-
situation will
Larry just made
send it out to
Said
these
that.
3 people?
I have
We even do like,
contractor's bid list, and no matter
Right.
what we have, 6,000, whatever, we send it out to every, I have 10 contractors on that list right
What
now.
do we do in an emergency situation? though?
We can
That's
still
what-
do the same thing,
You
they're
can-
gonna
yeah,
have to
right.
come up with the price the next day, whatever, we'd
Yeah.
still do the same thing.
We just need to move the process along.
Right.
A lot faster, yeah.
One thing I want to clarify, if I can, is the board obviously, and rightfully so, has a concern of, hey, let's make sure that this is a fair process for everybody, and that's the primary concern. Which is right on. That's what the statutes are all designed to do. What I want to clarify is what we're talking about in this range of $25,000 to $100,000 in no way impacts what you guys are concerned about, which is that fair deal, fair process to everybody. What is significant is, I mean, as you guys see in your packets, that's a half-inch
Oh, yeah.
document, and
I
in my
I could lie
opinion-
to you and tell you I read it all, but I started to.
in my opinion, we will be burning time, money, effort if we try to do this on projects that don't really justify it.
Right.
And we have, contracts, simpler processes in the past, which absolutely take into account the concern of getting this out to as many contractors. I mean, obviously, the more contractors that see it, the better price to the district, the more competition, that's exactly how it should work. But if we do get the board's approval in the motion that this process would be used in $100,000 or more, I think it would very much benefit the district. And then you could even include in the motion a recommendation that, hey, we want to continue to send the list that Mary referred to. We always do that in emergencies and other situations as well. There's also one specific provision that I looked at again, it's NRS 338, and I can't remember the other part of it, but it just simply has to do with any contractor that is awarded the bid. NRS 338 requires that contractor to have a non-discrimination policy. There's a lot of that in here already, but there's one additional provision that we came across that we also want to add to the contract. It's going to come right out of the statute, but it is something that's going to be one small addition to what you guys saw.
What is that addition, do you remember?
It's what I just described. It's that discrimination language that the contractor can't discriminate based on, say, sex, religion. And there is some of that language in there,
All right.
but there's a separate section of 338 that adds another, it doesn't,
Does it add another class, or just adds another?
no, it's just they're dealing with slightly different situations.
Okay.
So we're just gonna make sure, it's gonna be required to be in there by law anyways, so we're gonna put that in there.